Hello, everybody. Comrade Dankey here with a video all about our favorite community here on the internet of the Breadtube. And I've got some stern words to say about our community of the online left here, as its own humble constituent of the online left. I feel I've made some observations, and I have some criticisms about some of the things I've seen come from the online YouTube left community, and some may call this gatekeeping. And I guess you could consider it gatekeeping, but my whole mentality is, if you don't vet who you associate with in your community, if you don't vet who you allow in your community, well, then you're gonna let in a whole bunch of scumbag reactionaries that you're going to have to deal with somewhere down the line if you want to actually have a real movement and you don't want to just dilute it and have just some kind of weird woke circle jerk, which is what I'm most afraid this community is going to turn into. It's just a woke circle jerk instead of, you know, a means by which to accomplish working class action. So here's a little handy dandy Dankey Kang guide I've come up with on how to suck at being a YouTube leftist. So the first thing you want to do is you want to miseducate and lie and spread anti-communist propaganda about socialism. And this means regurgitating common Western sources, National Endowment of Democracy, CIA-funded think tanks, yada yada yada. This means platforming authors funded by, like, the Hoover organization, the Hoover Foundation, whatever the fuck it was called. This means quoting anything from the Black Book of Communism. This basically means regurgitating anything you hear in the Western mainstream press funded exclusively by big capitalists and big business. So anyone who does this, you're not really doing the online leftist community any favors by spreading lies and misinformation about socialism, socialist regimes and politicians and theory. You're not doing us any favors, so stop doing that. You go to the gulag. Another thing that I've noticed a lot of people do is they sort of cater to and sponsor reactionaries. And when I mean reactionaries, I mean people who, like, peddle these sort of anti-communist ideas. Even if, like, you yourself as an online leftist don't peddle these anti-communist ideas, these reactionary ideas, there are certain instances where I have observed these leftists platforming people, and not just like in an adversarial way, like I'm going to debate this person, but platforming them like, hey, here's my buddy, here's my friend, here's my comrade. They call them their comrade, which infuriates me because that's not being a comrade. Alright? If you're throwing communism under the bus, you're not being a comrade. You're being a chud. Hate to break it to you. Another thing I've noticed that these suckish, ineffective online leftist YouTubers do, and I'm not going to name any names, is they dilute their language and their ideals as communists or as leftists, as socialists, to appeal to liberals and conservatives and fascists. They'll find themselves using certain slurs. They'll find themselves using derogatory words. They'll find themselves being not politically correct, just for the explicit purpose of appealing to fascists I'll find them throwing communist regimes under the bus, the actions of communist regimes, the achievements of these regimes. They'll throw them under the bus to appeal to liberals and conservatives. And my whole criticism with that is that how in the world is it helpful? How is it helpful to parrot and regurgitate Western propaganda that we've all been choked down with about the Soviet Union? Right? I've been taught ever since I was a little bitty baby boy that the Soviet Union was this evil hellscape world, that like this evil country that couldn't accomplish a single fucking thing except massive bread lines and gulags. Hate to break it to you, but that's not the reality, folks. Sure, they had their problems, but to criticize the Soviet Union with this sort of blanket capitalist sneering, this sort of, they tried that and it fucked up and they failed because communism's stupid, so we should never try that again. Like, adopting that sort of mentality isn't helpful. It's not constructive. To hear actual socialists criticize the Socialist Union, they say things like, yeah, of course it wasn't perfect. Here's what they did wrong. Here's what I think they should do in the future. There's a certain pragmatic way to go about this without throwing the entire theory and idea out the fucking window. But you listen to some of these reactionaries and they will tell you that communism is a thing of the past, that it was tried and that it failed, and so now we have to do this new way that ignores communism, that ignores Marxism, that ignores dialectical materialism. And because of that, the final thing they do that sort of really solidifies them as sucking at being a YouTube leftist, they find themselves keeping everything vague and idealized and abstract when it comes to action. You ask some of these people, well, what do we do? What are we even revolting against? And they won't even be able to tell you. The bourgeoisie, well, maybe they are the bourgeoisie. Maybe they have bourgeois sympathies. And the people peddling so-called left-wing views aren't actual left-wingers. They're reactionaries. But they keep everything vague. How do we do the revolution? Well, the revolution is going to be amorphous. It's going to be dictated by the material conditions at that time, and you know, maybe we can have a revolution if we all like get this hashtag trending on Twitter. Maybe we can get the revolution going if we create like one big workers union and we do a massive general strike. Maybe we can get the revolution going, you know, XYZ, but it's all vague, it's all abstract, and it's all idealized. And when it comes to action, when it comes to how do we actually establish a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, they don't really have good answers. And keep in mind, when I say they, I'm referring only to a certain subsect of the online leftist community. Those who perpetuate these kind of non-effective actions that I've talked about. There's another whole section of the online leftist community that does things right. They educate about socialism. They do a good job doing it, so that people don't have to bust out all these old books. They just have to look up what this guy says or what that guy says. And they can break it down to you in modern language and help you to understand the theory. They teach their audiences how to spot reactionaries out there and why they shouldn't listen to them. They debunk common lies perpetuated by anarchists, anti-communist anarchists, I should specify, liberals, conservatives, and fascists. And most importantly, they teach their audience how to organize and inspire real-life working-class action. Everything that I've criticized these crappy, shitty online leftists of doing, these guys do the opposite, and they do it right. So try to be like them. Don't be a reactionary, and don't cater to them. Don't dilute your message to cater to them, and have real concrete approaches to action in real life and praxis. Don't just keep it all vague and utopian and idealized and say, well, you know, the revolution will come when everybody walks lockstep hand in hand and sings Kumbaya. Like, that's not going to fucking happen. A real revolution, like, teach how real revolutions work. Like, it's not gonna be pretty. It's not gonna be perfect. It's not gonna be shiny and sparkly. It's not going to be a revolution of aesthetics. It's going to be a revolution of reality, of material. It's going to revolutionize the world. It's not going to revolutionize this sort of ideal, abstracted reality that you've constructed in your head, this sort of liberal faux reality. Those who are living in the third world, who experience the stick of global capitalism every single day, those who are working a dead-end minimum wage job, who have medical bills to pay in the United States, those who are working in a sweatshop or dying of homelessness in the streets, they understand the necessity of revolution. It's only these privileged Western first world semi-bougie armchair socialist, hashtag socialists, that question the necessity of a revolution. So keep that in mind. Keep the suffering of the children of the third world in mind. Keep the suffering of the worker in the first world, in the United States of America even, in mind. The people of Flint, Michigan, keep them in mind when you question the necessity of a revolution. Keep them in mind before you quote another source from the National Endowment of Democracy. Keep them in mind before you sponsor another reactionary on your channel. That's all I have to say. Dankey Kang out.